Oh no! A disclaimer! What are we gonna do? Anyway, the following is equivalent to a video review, meant for informational purposes for people who are curious to know about certain things. Therefore, under Section 107 of US copyright law, all content in this video is protected through fair use, for it is simply there to serve as things for me to comment and share my knowledge on. No more and no less. Now, keep in mind, Masked Rider is owned by Saban Brands, and Kamen Rider Black RX is owned by Toei Company and Ishinomori Productions. If you can, please support the official release of these shows. Enjoy! Hello and welcome to an episode of Adaptation Decay. Today, we're gonna look at how the final story arc in Kamen Rider Black RX decays into the final episode of Saban's Masked Rider. Masked Rider! I'll stop. Masked Rider's final episode, The Invasion of Leewood, story-wise, uses 2 episodes out of the final story arc in Kamen Rider Black RX, which is basically this huge crossover with the Showa-era Kamen Riders. But there's one big problem. Since none of the previous Riders were familiar with anybody in the United States, their appearance in Masked Rider seemed so out of place. But to be fair, in Kamen Rider Black RX, the Showa Riders seemed out of place too. They just show up randomly, fight, and just stand there most of the time, really. Invasion of Leewood is practically the only episode of Masked Rider that's identical to its Kamen Rider counterpart. So I guess it's logical to compare them. So let's begin. Let's start off with Kamen Rider Black RX. As you probably know, the main character of Kamen Rider Black RX is Kotaro Minami, who gets adopted by the Sahara family after the events of the previous series, Kamen Rider Black. Many of the early episodes show Kotaro trying to hide his identity as a Kamen Rider for the protection of his new family. But since these 2 episodes are near the end of the show, I assume at this point the Sahara family already knows that Kotaro is Black RX. Since Crisis already knows that Black RX is in fact Kotaro Minami, naturally, the Sahara family would be in grave danger if they knew where he lived. And understandably, the family becomes so paranoid of their lives, to the point where they kick Kotaro out of the house for the greater good. And of course, Kotaro being the noble guy that he is, he agrees. Not that it would help the family in any way. Spoiler alert, the parents die! Meanwhile, the new monster of the story arc comes up and fucks up everything. He even injures Kotaro's best friend, Joe, and his girlfriend. Then we cut back to the Sahara household, where Kotaro tucks in his step-siblings. Then he leaves. The parents get all emotional and say goodbye to Kotaro for the last time. Kotaro meets up with his friend Kyoko and randomly gets ambushed by Crisis. In natural fashion, Kotaro gets so fucking pissed and kicks ass as Kamen Rider Black RX. He fights off the grunts with the help of Kyoko, Joe, and his girlfriend. That's teamwork for you! The monster of the story arc waltzes in and nearly fucks up Kotaro. And lo and behold, the Showa Riders rescue him and stuff. Back at an abandoned warehouse, an unconscious Kotaro wakes up and sees the Showa Riders, and is like, "Who the fuck are you?" And each respective rider introduces himself. And then Crisis comes back, everyone fights, and stuff happened. Next episode. Kotaro, his friends, and all the riders now have to face the monster. In this episode, Kotaro gets beat up most of the time to the point where he just needs strength. So his friend Kyoko uses her powers to open up the ground and give Kotaro a shower.
Really? Really?
After that, Kotaro has enough water power to transform himself into Bio Rider. He goes inside the monster and destroys him from the inside. Kotaro's presumably dead at this point, and his friends get all emotional while the riders just stand there. Wow, you guys are so fucking helpful. Of course, Kotaro gets better. So he, the riders, and his friends fight off a bunch of monsters they previously fought throughout the entire season of Kamen Rider Black RX. And with the power of teamwork and friendship, the episode's done. The episodes that follow Masked Rider didn't use Invasion of Leewood, so I'm gonna skip them for now. Let's move on to Saban's Masked Rider. Now, before I get into Invasion of Leewood, let's get into some technical stuff first. In particular, the scenes where Dex wears that infamous white outfit. Since Saban had a piss-poor budget at the time, the production crew couldn't afford to rent any monster costumes from Kamen Rider Black RX, considering that they were probably unusable or rotten somewhere in Japan. So the only way they could make Dex look like he's fighting the monsters is if they used stock footage of Kotaro as Dex's stunt double. They did that by dressing up actor TJ Roberts in a replica Kotaro outfit. Why? So he can blend in with the stock footage, of course. The thing is here, it's kind of 50-50. Sometimes it worked and sometimes it didn't. Usually when it did work, Kotaro's face is completely obscured throughout the entire fight. Usually when it didn't work, it's because Kotaro's face is obviously seen throughout those fights. I mean, like that one. And this one, how could you possibly... Never mind. Another controversy about these scenes is the fact that they were so horribly edited. This was either because they were in an obviously different location. Like this one, flags, carousel, flags, carousel. This wasn't the case when they filmed the pilot episode though. I know that's nitpicking, but it just pisses a lot of fans off. Of course it did work. I'm not gonna lie, it did work. But it had to be executed properly, like in Power Rangers Samurai. Obviously they did better as time goes on, but seriously. In Invasion of Leewood, however, the issue wasn't just Kotaro's face. The issue was the entire outfit itself. There were two outfits Kotaro wore in Kamen Rider Black RX. One where it was all white, and another where he wore a white jacket and some blue jeans. The issue here is that the jacket he wears with the blue jeans is totally different from the one that he wore previously. In Masked Rider, Dex wears the jeans, but he wears the jacket that was used earlier on in Black RX. I guess the budget didn't cover that, so I guess that's understandable. However, this causes an inconsistency within the stock footage. The jacket changes entirely when going from one scene to another. Another inconsistency is Dex's hair. TJ Roberts gets a haircut, which is inconsistent with the stock footage shots. There's a huge difference between a black 80s perm and a brown stubby pompadour. Of course I'm nitpicking, but it's something I feel worthy to point out. Now to the episode itself. Like I said, Invasion of Leewood is similar plot-wise to the Japanese episodes. However, they took away all the dramatic family stuff in Black RX and inserted fucking Furbus. Other than fucking Furbus, the episode is almost the same, really. Unlike Kotaro, Dex doesn't have any friends, so in this episode, he gets injured by the monster via stock footage from another episode. Epic dodging! Let's freeze frame this explosion for a second.
What the fuck was that? Really, Saban?
Yes, Saban was cheap enough not to film original footage with their pyrotechnics. Really shoddy editing there. Really shoddy editing. It was just one frame. One frame! God damn it! But anyway, since Dex has no friends, he can't meet up with another person. So Dex's family drives into a random quarry so he can fight off the monster. Fucking God. Like Kotaro, he gets fucked up and the Showa Rider, Masked Rider warriors randomly show up to save him.
Ah, good. He's regaining consciousness. Oh,
Hey, guys, look. It's Kotaro's friends that are randomly there. There's Joe, and there's his girlfriend, and all the other people that were there in that episode. Wow. I didn't know they were in Masked Rider. Okay. Anyway, Dex wakes up to find the Masked Rider warriors introducing themselves in this horrid scene.
The Masked Rider warrior leader.
Wait, warrior leader? Wait, shouldn't that be for Kamen Rider 2? Wait, V3!
I am Rider-Man.
Rider-Man!
I am Masked Rider X.
X?
I am Amazon.
What?
Strong man at your service.
What the hell's a strong
I
man?
am Z-Cross.
Well, at least they got Z-Cross right. What the hell just happened here? I demand an answer!
Objection!
Well, there is a pretty simple explanation for this. Now, the reason why the whole roll call was fucked up was that they cut out Rider-Man and Kamen Rider 2 from the stock footage. So, they read out the names correctly in chronological order. But since they cut out those two riders and left the order of the names unchanged, the roll call just got fucked up. Of course, they cut out Rider-Man for the obvious reasons. There's a Japanese face under that helmet. And they cut out Kamen Rider 2 to avoid confusion with Kamen Rider 1, since they look identical. even though they're both seen on screen lots of times, but that's beside the point. Another thing that fans like to point out in this scene is the fact that in the close-up shots of Dex, Bio Rider and Shadow Moon costumes are seen in the background. This is because of the low budget. Saban couldn't afford all the Rider costumes since they were probably rotting away at the moment, and they just went with what they had, which were the Shadow Moon and Bio Rider costumes. So it's understandable. Hold on, let's freeze frame this for a second here. Alright, take that frame and use the same frame from the Black RX episode. Hey guys, look! It's Kotaro's friends! Again! Oh my god! They're Masked Rider! I was right! Moving on. So like the Black RX episode, they fight and Dex gets fucked up. Since Dex has no friends, he suddenly pulls a random power from his ass and opens up the ground to give himself a shower. Yes, it's really awkward in Black RX, and it's really awkward here. Of course, he has enough water power to turn into Masked Rider Super Blue, and since Dex has no friends, a scene that was once a dramatic heroic sacrifice type scene turns into... It's like Dex is fighting while being constipated. Okay. So the fight ends, the Masked Rider warriors disappear, and Dex hints at the possibility of having a son that could be a future Masked Rider.
Someday, you will have a son, and he too will be a Masked Rider, part of the legacy of Masked Rider warriors.
Someday, grandfather. Someday.
Which brings up something pretty interesting. What am I supposed to do, Father?
Lex, my only son, you are the Masked Rider. You must lead us into battle against Count Trigon and his evil forces. They enslaved our people, and they will pay the ultimate price for their actions.
Kiss your powers goodbye.
You're through, Trigon.
For Edenoi!
Masked Rider, War on Edenoi by Charlie's Treface.
It would be awesome if Kamen Rider Decay were adapted in that way, since many unfinished plot points in Masked Rider could be tied up through the Decayed crossover movie. But of course, many Kamen Rider fans would be offended by that since adaptations are bad! But is that really the case? Now, we have to ask ourselves a big question here. Exactly how much did Invasion of Leewood decay from the original source material? Well, your mileage may vary. In other words, it's really up to you. In my opinion anyway, it didn't decay that much. For starters, the overall plot of those Black RX episodes is retained in Invasion of Leewood. Secondly, the writers for Invasion of Leewood did take liberties from Black RX and replace the realistic points of this series with Masked Rider's sci-fi mythos. And that in itself is a plus on my side, since they basically stayed true to the original while also trying to do their own thing. And so ends another episode of Adaptation Decay. Hope you enjoyed it. See you soon.